The alarm screamed through the medical bay at 300 hours. Dr. Jake jerked awake in his quarters, already reaching for his uniform before his mind fully processed what was happening. After 6 years as a trauma surgeon on the frontier, his body knew the sound of an emergency before his brain caught up. He sprinted down the corridor of the Mercy's Hope, his medical frigate that patrolled the edge of Galactic Council space. The ship was small compared to military vessels, but it carried the most advanced medical equipment humanity had to offer. Jake had volunteered for frontier duty 3 years ago, believing that out here, far from Earth, he could make a real difference. The bridge was chaos when he arrived. Captain Lisa Hayes stood at the communications console, her face tight with concern. The main screen showed a vessel tumbling through space, trailing debris and atmosphere. "Report," Jake said, moving to her side. Lisa pointed at the screen. "Colony transport. They hit a debris field 20 minutes ago. Engine failure, hull breaches, and their medical bay is compromised. They have casualties." Jake studied the damaged ship. They were a species humanity had only met 5 years ago. They were cautious, private, and deeply protective of their young. Most species in the galaxy knew almost nothing about biology or medicine. "How many casualties?" Jake asked. Lisa's expression darkened. 3 critical, all juveniles, radiation exposure from their damaged medical bay. Jake's stomach dropped. "Children. Cubs, they call them. The captain is requesting assistance, but there's a problem." Lisa pulled up another screen. "Physiology is considered incompatible with non-medicine. Council protocols state that only certified specialists can treat their young. The nearest medical ship is 8 hours away." 8 hours? What's their condition? "Deteriorating rapidly. The captain estimates they have less than 4 hours before the radiation damage becomes fatal." Jake stared at the screen. 4 hours. 3 children dying while help was 8 hours away. The math was simple and brutal. "Prep the docking bay. We're going over there." Lisa grabbed his arm. "Jake, you're not certified for medicine. Hell, nobody outside their species is. If you make a mistake, if those cubs die because of something you do, it won't just end your career. It could damage relations between humanity and for generations. And if we do nothing, 3 children die while we watch. That's not acceptable. The protocols exist for a reason. Biology is complex. Their cellular structure, their chemistry, everything about them is different from anything we understand. You could kill them faster than the radiation." Jake pulled his arm free. "Then I'll read everything we have on physiology on the way over. Get me a link to the Galactic Medical Database. Every file, every study, everything." Lisa studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Your funeral. I'll start docking procedures. But Jake, if this goes wrong, I can't protect you from the council." "I know." 20 minutes later, Jake stood in the briefing room with his medical team. Nurse Price reviewed the limited data they had on while Cole and Bates Sanders prepped their portable medical equipment. "This is what we know," said, projecting an image of cellular structure on the screen. "Their DNA has a triple helix instead of our double helix. Their cells require precise electromagnetic balance to function properly. Too much or too little electromagnetic radiation, and their cellular repair mechanisms fail. So the radiation from their damaged medical bay is destroying that balance," Jake said. "Exactly. And here's the problem. Every treatment protocol we have for radiation sickness is designed for double helix DNA structures. If we apply our standard treatments too, we could accelerate their cellular breakdown instead of stopping it." Looked up from the equipment cases. "Then what can we do?" "I don't know yet," Jake admitted. "But we have to try. 3 children are dying over there." Bates' hand shook slightly as she checked the portable scanners. "What if we make things worse?" "Then we make things worse trying to save them instead of doing nothing and letting them die." Jake's voice was firm. "I need everyone focused. We're going into a situation we're not trained for, treating patients whose biology we barely understand. But we're all we've got. Those cubs have no one else. The docking procedure took 15 agonizing minutes. When the airlocks finally connected, Jake led his team across the umbilical into the ship. The difference was immediate. The air tasted different, the gravity felt slightly heavier, and the lighting had a strange quality that made everything look slightly off. A crew member met them at the airlock. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, with sleek fur covering their body and large eyes that reflected the corridor lights. They wore a translator device on their collar that converted their chittering speech into accented English. "You are the human medical team. Dr. Jake, we're here to help your cubs." The ears flattened against their head, a gesture Jake couldn't interpret. "The captain will meet you at the medical bay. Please follow me." They moved through corridors filled with crew members. Jake saw fear in their eyes, desperation in how they moved aside to let the humans pass. The translator device on their guide picked up fragments of conversation. "Humans cannot help. Our cubs need medicine. They will die. The humans do not understand our biology. Better to try than to let them fade." The medical bay doors opened, and Jake's heart clenched at what he saw inside. 3 small forms lay in containment units that sparked and flickered with failing power. The cubs were tiny, perhaps the size of human 5-year-olds, with soft fur and closed eyes. Monitoring equipment surrounded each unit, most of it showing readings Jake didn't recognize. Stood beside the units, their fur matted with sweat and exhaustion. The translator identified them as the ship's medic. "You cannot help them," the medic said immediately. "I appreciate that you came, but human medicine will kill them faster than the radiation." Jake moved closer to the units, studying the cubs. Their breathing was labored, their small chests rising and falling too rapidly. Beneath their fur, he could see skin that looked wrong, discolored and inflamed. "What have you tried?" Jake asked. "Everything in our protocols. Cellular stabilizers, electromagnetic field generators, radiation-purging compounds. Nothing works because the equipment is damaged. The electromagnetic fields are wrong, fluctuating instead of steady. Their cells cannot repair themselves in unstable conditions." Another entered the medical bay, moving with the authority of command. The captain. They moved immediately to the containment units, placing their hand against the transparent surface. "My mate's children," the captain said quietly. "My family. The medical ship is still 8 hours away. You told me your species has advanced medical capabilities. Can you help them or not?" Jake looked at the dying cubs, then at his team. His face was pale but determined, and Bait were already unpacking equipment, preparing for whatever he decided. He thought about all the reasons he should refuse. The protocols, the liability, the very real possibility that he would fail and make everything worse. Then he thought about what brought him out to the frontier in the first place. The belief that every life mattered, that you fought for each patient regardless of the odds. "I need to examine them first," Jake said. "Then I'll tell you if we can help." The captain's ears lifted slightly. "You have less than 4 hours. After that, no power in the galaxy can save them." Jake moved to the first containment unit, pulling out his medical scanner. The device beeped in confusion as it tried to analyze the cub's biology, struggling to categorize what it found. Appeared at his side. "Jake, the radiation levels in here are worse than they reported. These cubs are dying fast." "Then we work fast." Jake looked at the medic. "I need everything you know about their condition. Every reading, every failed treatment, everything." The medic hesitated, then began pulling up data files. As Jake studied the information, his mind raced through possibilities, comparing what he knew about human medicine to this alien biology he barely understood. The youngest cub suddenly gasped, their small body convulsing in the containment unit. Alarms shrieked from the monitoring equipment. "She's failing," the medic shouted. "Her cellular structure is collapsing." Jake made his decision in that instant. Right or wrong, action or inaction, he chose to fight. "Bait, prep for emergency treatment. We're doing this." Captain Lisa's voice crackled through his communicator. "Jake, the council has been of your actions. They're ordering you to stand down and wait for specialists." Jake pulled the communicator from his ear and handed it to the captain. "Tell the council that humanity doesn't abandon children to die while we wait for permission to save them." He turned back to the containment units, to 3 small lives hanging by a thread, and began the fight to prove that sometimes the rules had to bend for mercy. Jake's hands moved with practiced speed as he pulled on sterile gloves and approached the first containment unit. The youngest cub lay inside, her breathing rapid and shallow. Through the transparent surface, he could see her small chest heaving with each labored breath. "Get me a baseline on her vital signs. Use broad-spectrum scanning, everything we have." Position the portable scanner over the containment unit. The device hummed and beeped, its display showing readings that made no sense by human standards. She studied the data for a moment, then looked up with worried eyes. "Her core temperature is 43 degrees Celsius and rising. Heart rate equivalent is 180 and climbing. Cellular degradation is at 47% and accelerating." "In human terms?" "She's dying, Jake, fast." The medic pushed forward, his translator crackling with urgency. "You see, human equipment cannot properly read our biology. Your numbers mean nothing. You cannot help." Jake ignored him, focusing on the scanner display. The medic was right that the readings didn't match human standards, but patterns were emerging. The electromagnetic signature around the cub cells was chaotic, fluctuating wildly instead of maintaining steady rhythms. "You said your cells need stable electromagnetic fields to repair damage," Jake said to the medic. "Show me what stable looks like for your species." The medic pulled up a holographic display showing healthy cellular structure. Jake studied it carefully. The cells pulsed with regular electromagnetic waves, creating a rhythm that reminded him of a heartbeat. But these cubs showed no such rhythm. Their cellular fields were storms of random energy. "Your damaged equipment was trying to provide this stable field." "Yes, but the generators are broken. The fields fluctuate and our cells cannot lock onto them for repair. Without stable fields, the radiation damage spreads through their entire bodies." Jake turned to, "What do we have that generates controlled electromagnetic fields?" Thought for a moment. "The bone marrow stimulator. We use it to encourage cell growth in transplant patients. It creates precise electromagnetic pulses." "Can we modify it to match cellular frequencies?" "Maybe, but Jake, that equipment is designed for human biology. If we get the frequency wrong, we kill them faster than the radiation." Jake finished the sentence. "I know, but doing nothing guarantees they die. At least this gives them a chance." Bait was already pulling the bone marrow stimulator from their equipment cases. The device was compact, designed for portable field surgery. She placed it on the medical table and powered it on. Moved beside Jake, her voice low. "Even if we match the frequency, we don't know what power levels to use. Too weak and it won't work. Too strong and we could fry their cells. Then we start low and increase gradually while monitoring their response." Jake looked at the 3 cubs in their failing containment units. "We have to try." The captain approached, their large eyes fixed on Jake. "You truly believe you can save them?" "I believe we have knowledge and equipment that might help. Whether it works or not, I won't know until we try. But I promise you this, we will fight for them with everything we have." The captain's ears flattened, then rose slowly. "Then I trust you with my family. Do what you must." Jake moved to the portable computer had set up, pulling up every file they had on biology. The information was limited, mostly observational data from diplomatic exchanges. But buried in the technical reports, he found something useful: electromagnetic frequency ranges detected from healthy tissue samples. Here, he pointed at the screen, these frequencies, can we program the stimulator to match them? Bate leaned over his shoulder studying the data. I can try, give me 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes felt like hours. Jake watched the cubs deteriorate, their breathing becoming more labored, their small bodies twitching with pain. The youngest was failing fastest, her cellular degradation approaching 50%. The medic had said that beyond 50%, the damage became irreversible. Got it, Bate announced. The stimulator is programmed to the frequencies, but Jake, I have no idea what power level to use. Jake made a decision he knew could haunt him forever. We tested on the youngest first. She's failing fastest. If this works, we'll have data to help the others. If it doesn't work. He didn't finish the sentence. The mother appeared in the doorway of the medical bay. She was smaller than the captain, her fur a lighter shade, and her eyes were red from crying. When she saw the humans working around her cubs, she made a sound that the translator couldn't convert into words. It was pure anguish. The captain moved to her side, speaking in their chittering language. The translator caught fragments. They are trying, human doctors, only chance. The mother approached the containment units, pressing her hands against the surface near her youngest daughter. She looked at Jake, and he saw the same desperate hope he had seen in the eyes of hundreds of human parents facing impossible situations. Please, the translator rendered her speech. She is called Soft Whisper. She loves to climb and sing. Please save her. Jake felt the weight of that plea settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just a medical case or a diplomatic situation. This was a mother watching her child die, begging a stranger to perform a miracle. We're going to do everything we can, Jake promised. He turned back to the medical equipment. Open the containment unit. We need direct access to place the stimulator properly. Jake, the radiation levels. I know, radiation suits for everyone, move fast. They pulled on the protective suits quickly. Jake's hands felt clumsy in the thick gloves, but there was no other way. When opened the containment unit, alarms screamed warnings about dangerous radiation levels. Jake lifted Soft Whisper carefully. She was so light, barely heavier than a human infant. Her fur was soft under his gloved hands, and he could feel her heart racing against his palm. She whimpered, a sound that cut through him. It's okay, he said softly, knowing she couldn't understand him. We're going to help you. He placed her on the medical table. Bate positioned the bone marrow stimulator against her chest, right over her heart. The device was designed for humans, but Jake hoped the principles were universal enough. Starting at 5% power, Bate announced. Activating now. The stimulator hummed to life. Jake watched the scanner readings intently, looking for any sign of change in Soft Whisper's cellular activity. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the chaotic electromagnetic patterns around her cells began to shift. I'm seeing something, said, excitement creeping into her voice. The cellular fields are starting to stabilize in the areas closest to the stimulator. Increase to 10%, Jake ordered. Bate adjusted the controls. The change was more obvious now. The scanner showed Soft Whisper cells beginning to lock onto the artificial electromagnetic field, using it as a template to restore their own rhythms. It's working, breathed. Her cellular degradation has stopped increasing. But Jake saw something else in the data. The effect was localized, only affecting cells within a few centimeters of the stimulator. To treat her whole body, to reverse the damage throughout her system, would require either a much more powerful field or multiple stimulators working in concert. We need more time, Jake said, and more equipment. Bate, get back to the Mercy's Hope and bring every electromagnetic stimulation device we have. Medical, research, anything that generates controlled fields. That will take at least 20 minutes, protested. Then move fast, and I will monitor Soft Whisper and start planning treatment for the other two cubs. As and Bait left, Jake studied the data more carefully. The youngest cub was responding, but slowly. The cellular damage was so extensive that even with the stimulator working, her recovery would take hours, and they had two more cubs in the same condition. The medic approached, studying the scanner readings with obvious surprise. "You are actually stabilizing her cells. How is this possible? Human medicine should not work on our biology." "It's not human medicine exactly," Jake explained. "It's human technology adapted to biology. We're using electromagnetic field generation to give your cells something stable to lock onto for repair. But the power levels, the frequencies, everything about this should be wrong for our species." Jake looked at him directly. "Tell me something. Have you ever studied Earth's electromagnetic environment?" The medic's ears twitched in confusion. "No, why would that matter?" "Earth has a strong, complex electromagnetic field. Constant solar radiation, magnetic pole shifts, electromagnetic storms. Human technology had to develop ways to generate and control precise electromagnetic fields just to function on our. That technology happens to work for your biology too." Understanding dawned in the medic's large eyes. "You are saying that humanity developed the exact tools needed to treat us by accident, simply because of where you evolved." "Maybe it's not accident," said quietly. "Maybe it's why we're out here meeting you. Every species brings something unique to the galaxy. This might be one of humanity's gifts." The captain had been listening. They approached Jake, their posture formal. "If you save my cubs, Doctor, you will have given humanity more than a gift. You will have given us hope that the galaxy is not as divided as we feared." Jake wanted to respond, but Soft Whisper suddenly convulsed on the table. Alarms shrieked from the monitors. Her cellular degradation, which had stopped climbing, suddenly spiked upward. "What's happening?" Jake demanded. "Check the readings. The stimulator is working on local cells, but the radiation damage is spreading faster in the areas we're not treating. It's like her body is prioritizing the stabilized cells and abandoning the others." Jake understood immediately. They had bought time, proven the concept worked, but they needed to treat her entire body simultaneously. One stimulator wasn't enough. They needed multiple devices working in perfect coordination. And they needed them now, before the cellular damage spread beyond the point of recovery. And Bait burst back into the medical bay carrying equipment cases. They moved fast, unpacking devices and setting them up around the medical table where Soft Whisper lay struggling. "We brought everything," announced. 6 more electromagnetic stimulators, 3 neural field generators, and 4 tissue regeneration units. Whatever you need, we have it." Jake quickly assessed what they had brought. The equipment represented the best of human medical technology, but none of it was designed for this purpose. They would have to improvise, adapt, and hope that their modifications worked before time ran out. "I need you to map Soft Whisper's body. Mark every area where cellular degradation is above 40%. Those are our priority zones." Ran the scanner over the small cub, building a 3-dimensional image that showed the damage throughout her body. Large portions glowed red on the display, indicating critical cellular breakdown. "She has 7 critical zones," reported. "Chest, abdomen, both legs, both arms, and head. 7 zones, 7 devices." Jake pointed to the equipment and Bait had brought. "We place 1 stimulator on each zone, synchronize them to operate at the same frequency and power level, and treat her entire body at once." The medic watched them work, his earlier skepticism replaced by careful attention. "You have never done this before." "Never," Jake admitted. "We're inventing this as we go, but the principle is sound. If 1 stimulator can stabilize local cells, 7 working together should stabilize her entire body." "And if you are wrong?" then we're wrong trying to save her life. Bate began modifying the devices, programming each one to match the cellular frequencies they had discovered earlier. Her hands moved with steady precision despite the pressure. Helped her, connecting the devices to a central control unit so they could be operated in perfect synchronization. Jake watched the clock. They had been working for over an hour. The Cubs had less than 3 hours left before the specialists arrived. More importantly, Soft Whisper's cellular degradation was now at 52%. They were past the point the medic had said was irreversible. "Devices are ready," Bate announced. "But Jake, we have a problem. These units generate a lot of heat when operating at high power. If we run all 7 at once for extended periods, they could overheat." "How long can they run safely?" "Maybe 20 minutes at full power. Then they need to cool for 10 minutes before we can use them again." Jake did the math in his head. 20 minutes of treatment, 10 minutes of cooling. They would need multiple cycles to fully stabilize Soft Whisper cells, and during the cooling periods, the radiation damage would continue spreading. "We'll have to work in cycles then," Jake decided. 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off. During the cooling periods, I want you monitoring for any cellular collapse. If we see degradation accelerating during the breaks, we'll have to risk overheating the equipment. Nodded, her face showing the strain of the situation. Understood. They positioned the 7 devices carefully on Soft Whisper's small body. Each one was placed over a critical zone, secured with medical tape designed for human skin but hopefully functional on fur. The mother watched from across the room, her hands pressed together in a gesture that might have been prayer. The captain stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder for support. "Everyone ready?" Jake asked his team. They confirmed with nods. Jake took a deep breath and gave the order, "Activate all devices, full power now." Bate pressed the control. All 7 stimulators hummed to life simultaneously. The sound filled the medical bay, a steady drone that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Jake watched the scanner display intently. For the first 30 seconds, nothing changed. Then, like watching ice melt, the red zones on the display began to shift. The chaotic electromagnetic patterns around Soft Whisper's cells started organizing, finding rhythm, locking onto the artificial fields generated by the human equipment. "Cellular degradation has stopped increasing," reported. "It's holding steady at 52%. Keep monitoring. Look for any signs of reversal." Minutes passed. Jake found himself holding his breath, watching numbers on a screen that represented whether a child lived or died. The medical bay was silent except for the hum of equipment and Soft Whisper's labored breathing. "Wait," said suddenly. "I'm seeing cellular regeneration. Small scale, but it's there. Her cells are actually repairing damage." Jake leaned closer to the display. Was right. In the areas where the stimulators were strongest, cells were not just stabilizing but actively reversing the radiation damage. The process was slow, barely measurable, but it was happening. "Degradation dropping to 51%, announced. The medic moved to their side, studying the scanner in amazement. Cellular regeneration in radiation damage this severe should be impossible. Even our best medical facilities cannot achieve this. "Human technology," said with pride. "We're stubborn about saving lives." But Jake's attention was on the clock. 15 minutes had passed. They had 5 minutes left before the equipment needed to cool. And while Soft Whisper was improving, she was doing so very slowly. At this rate, they would need hours of treatment to fully repair the damage. "Temperature warning on Stimulator 3, Bate called out. "It's running hot." "How hot?" "Approaching critical threshold. We'll need to shut down soon." Jake faced an impossible calculation. Shut down now to protect the equipment, losing precious treatment time. Or push the devices harder, risk burning them out but potentially save more of Soft Whisper's cells. "Keep running," Jake ordered, Push to 25 minutes. We need every second we can get. Jake, if the units burn out. Then we find another way. But every minute we run now is cellular damage we prevent and repair. Those minutes could mean the difference between her recovery and permanent damage. Bait adjusted the controls, her jaw tight with tension. The stimulators continued their work, but Jake could hear them straining, the hum becoming slightly higher pitched as they operated beyond safe limits. Degradation at 49%, reported. We're making progress. 20 minutes passed, then 22. The temperature warnings were constant now, alarms beeping from multiple devices. Bait watched the readouts like a hawk, her finger hovering over the emergency shutdown control. 25 minutes, she announced. Jake, we have to stop now. Shut them down. Bait hit the control. The stimulators powered off, their hum dying away to silence. Soft whisper lay on the table, her breathing still labored but perhaps slightly less desperate than before. Status, Jake asked. Cellular degradation stabilized at 47%, reported. We repaired 5% of the damage in 25 minutes. Jake ran the numbers. 5% in 25 minutes. They needed to reverse 47% to bring her back to healthy levels. That meant hours of treatment, multiple cycles of heating and cooling, constant monitoring to prevent setbacks during the cooling periods. And we have 2 more cubs, said quietly, voicing what everyone was thinking. Jake looked at the other 2 containment units. The middle cub, a male called through the translator as Swift Runner, showed 45% cellular degradation. The oldest, Bright Paw, was at 43%. Both were deteriorating steadily while the humans focused on their sister. We can't save them one at a time, Jake realized. We don't have enough time. We need to treat all 3 simultaneously. The medic's ears flattened. That is impossible. You only have 7 devices. Each cub requires 7 for full body treatment. You would need 21 devices total. Then we adapt. Jake turned to his team. What if we use fewer devices per cub, focus on their most critical zones, and accept that some areas will have to wait? Bait considered this. We could do 4 devices per cub. That would cover the chest, abdomen, and head, the most vital areas, but the extremities would continue deteriorating. Could we rotate, treat vital areas first, then switch to extremities during the next cycle? Maybe, said. But Jake, coordinating 3 patients with rotating treatment zones, tracking all that data, managing equipment temperatures. It's going to be incredibly complex. One mistake and we could lose all of them. Jake looked at his team. They were exhausted already from the stress and the rapid pace of work. What he was asking them to do next would push them to their absolute limits, but there was no alternative. We're going to need more hands, Jake said. He turned to the medic. Can you help us? I'll teach you how to read our scanners and operate the controls. We need someone who understands biology monitoring these cubs. The medic hesitated, then straightened. I will help. Show me what to do. Over the next 15 minutes, while the stimulators cooled, Jake organized his team and the medic into a coordinated unit. And Bait would handle equipment operation for Swift Runner and Bright Paw, would monitor all 3 cubs, watching for dangerous changes. The medic would focus on interpreting their biological responses, and Jake would coordinate everything, making real-time decisions about treatment adjustments. They moved Swift Runner and Bright Paw from their containment units onto additional medical tables. The 2 cubs were slightly larger than their sister, their bodies showing the same signs of radiation damage. When Bright Paw was moved, he opened his eyes briefly, looking at Jake with an expression the doctor couldn't interpret. We're going to help you, Jake promised the cub. Just hold on. They positioned 4 stimulators on each cub, focusing on chest, abdomen, and head as planned. The remaining equipment was distributed as backup in case any device failed. Is everyone clear on the plan? Jake asked. First cycle, we treat vital organs for 20 minutes, 10-minute cooling break. Second cycle, we switch to extremities. We keep rotating until either the cubs are stable or the medical ship arrives. What about you? Asked. You've been working for over 3 hours straight. You need rest. I'll rest when these cubs are out of danger. Jake took his position at the central control station, his hands on the master controls that would activate all 12 devices simultaneously. He looked at the 3 small forms on the medical tables, at the parents watching with desperate hope, at his team ready to give everything they had. Beginning treatment cycle 1, Jake announced, activating all units now. The medical bay filled with the hum of human technology fighting to save alien lives, and for the next several hours there was no room for doubt or fear. Only the steady work of medicine, the careful monitoring of data, and the stubborn human refusal to accept that any life was beyond saving. 6 hours into the treatment cycles, Jake's vision blurred from exhaustion. He blinked hard, forcing his eyes to focus on the scanner displays. The numbers were good. Soft Whisper's cellular degradation had dropped to 22%. Swift Runner was at 18%. Both cubs were breathing easier, their small bodies finally starting to recover from the radiation damage. But Bright Paw was different. Jake, we have a problem, said quietly, moving to his side. Bright Paw's cellular degradation is down to 15%, better than his siblings, but I'm seeing something else. His neural activity is wrong. Jake pulled up the neural scan on his display. The image showed Bright Paw's brain activity, and what he saw made his stomach drop. Large sections of the brain showed minimal electrical activity. The pathways that should have been firing with regular patterns were dark and silent. Neural damage from prolonged radiation exposure, Jake said. How extensive? Approximately 35% of his neural tissue shows signs of permanent damage. The radiation destroyed connections between brain cells before we could stabilize him. Jake moved to Bright Paw's table. The cub lay quietly, his breathing steady but his eyes closed. When Jake gently touched his hand, there was no response. No movement, no acknowledgement of the touch. The medic approached, studying the neural scans. His ears flattened completely against his head. This is the worst outcome. His body will survive, but his mind may not. Neural damage in cubs is considered irreversible. Even our best specialists cannot repair destroyed brain pathways. There has to be something we can do, protested. The medic's translator conveyed sadness in his tone. I wish there was, but neural tissue is the most complex part of our biology. The connections between brain cells are not just physical, they involve quantum entanglement at the subatomic level. Once those connections are destroyed, they cannot be rebuilt. Bright Paw may survive, but he will never be the same. He may never wake up at all. The parents had been resting in an adjoining room, exhausted from hours of watching their cubs fight for life. The captain now stood in the doorway, having heard the medic's words. They moved slowly to Bright Paw's table, touching their cub's forehead with gentle care. He was the brave one, the captain said softly. Always first to explore, first to ask questions, first to protect his sisters. And now, the mother appeared beside her mate, and when she saw Bright Paw lying so still, she made a sound that needed no translation. It was the sound of a mother's heart breaking. Jake stared at the neural scans, his mind racing through everything he knew about brain injuries. Human neural tissue could sometimes regenerate if given the right stimulus. Stroke victims could relearn lost functions through therapy. Brain damage that seemed permanent could sometimes be reversed with aggressive treatment. But this wasn't human neurology. This was a species whose brain chemistry and structure were fundamentally different. Every instinct told him to try anyway, but years of medical training warned him about the dangers of applying treatments across species barriers. Show me healthy neural activity, Jake said to the medic. I want to see what normal brain function looks like for your species. The medic pulled up a comparison image. Healthy neural tissue showed incredible complexity. The brain cells connected in dense networks, and each connection pulsed with electromagnetic activity. But there was something else, something Jake had never seen in human neurology. The connections seemed to exist in multiple layers, overlapping patterns that suggested information was being transmitted through more than just electrical impulses. "You said quantum entanglement," Jake said slowly. "The brain cells are connected through quantum mechanics." "Yes, our neural tissue exists partially in quantum states. It allows for faster information processing and more complex thought patterns than most species achieve. But it also means that when connections are destroyed, they cannot simply regrow. The quantum entanglement must be reestablished, and we do not know how to do that artificially." Jake studied the scans more carefully. The damaged areas in Bright Paw's brain weren't completely dead. He could see residual activity, faint signals that suggested some brain cells were still trying to function. They just couldn't connect to their neighbors without the quantum pathways. "What if we don't try to rebuild the old connections?" Jake said. "What if we stimulate the surviving brain cells to form new ones?" The medic's ears lifted slightly. "New connections. That is theoretically possible in cubs, their brains are still developing. But without the quantum entanglement, new connections would be useless. Unless we can create an environment where quantum entanglement can occur naturally." Jake turned to Bate. "The electromagnetic stimulators we've been using, they generate fields that interact with cells at the quantum level, right? That's why they work for cellular repair." Bate thought about this. "The fields we generate do affect quantum states in tissue. That's part of how the cellular repair process works, but neural tissue is more complex than regular cells." "But it's the same principle," Jake insisted. "If we can create the right electromagnetic environment and stimulate neural growth, maybe the quantum entanglement will establish itself naturally as new connections form." Shook her head. "Jake, even if that's possible, we have no idea what frequency or power level to use. Brain tissue is delicate. Too much stimulation and we could cause seizures or kill the remaining healthy neurons." "Then we start very low and increase gradually while monitoring his response, exactly like we did with the cellular treatment." The medic studied Jake with an expression that might have been hope or might have been disbelief. "You are suggesting performing experimental neural regeneration on a child's brain, using equipment designed for a different species, based on theory you invented in the last 5 minutes. This is insane." "Yes," Jake agreed. "It's completely insane. But the alternative is accepting that a child will live the rest of his life in a vegetative state when there might be something we can do to prevent it." The captain had been listening. They looked at Jake with those large, reflective eyes. "If you fail, if you damage him further, I will not blame you. You have already saved my cubs' lives. But if there is any chance, any possibility that my son could recover, I want you to try." Jake looked at his team. They were exhausted, having worked for hours under incredible pressure. What he was asking them to do now was even more difficult and more dangerous than treating the radiation damage. They would be operating on a child's brain with equipment and techniques that had never been tested. "I can't order any of you to help with this," Jake said. "This is beyond what anyone could reasonably expect. If you want to step back, I'll understand." "Spoke first. I'm in. We've come this far, might as well see it through." Bate nodded. "That cub deserves a chance at a normal life. I'm not walking away now." Placed her hand on Jake's shoulder. "We're a team. Where you go, we go." The medic stepped forward. "I will assist as well. If human medicine can do what medicine cannot, I want to learn how." Jake felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. He wasn't alone in this impossible task. He had a team willing to take risks, willing to push boundaries, willing to fight for a single child's future. "Then let's get to work. Bate, modify a neural stimulator to the lowest possible power setting. I want continuous monitoring of Bright Paw's brain activity. The moment we see anything dangerous, seizures, cell death, anything, we shut down immediately. They prepared the equipment while Jake studied the neural scans more carefully, mapping out which areas of Bright Paw's brain were most damaged and which had the best chance of forming new connections. He marked priority zones, creating a treatment plan that would attempt to stimulate neural growth in stages. The mother approached him as he worked. Through the translator, she said, Bright Paw's first words were, "Why sky bright?" He was always curious, always asking questions. Please give him the chance to ask questions again. Jake met her eyes. I promise I will do everything in my power to give him that chance. They positioned the modified neural stimulator carefully on Bright Paw's head, targeting the areas Jake had identified as having the best potential for new growth. The device was set to a power level barely above zero, just enough to create a gentle electromagnetic field around the damaged neural tissue. "Everyone ready?" Jake asked. His team confirmed. Jake placed his hand on the control, took a deep breath, and activated the device. For the first minute, nothing happened. The neural scans showed no change in Bright Paw's brain activity. Jake gradually increased the power, moving up in tiny increments, watching for any response. "I'm seeing something," said suddenly. "Very faint increase in activity in the damaged zones." Jake held the power level steady, letting the device work. On the scanner display, he could see neurons in the damaged areas beginning to respond to the electromagnetic field. It was subtle, barely measurable, but it was there. "Increasing power by 0.5%, Jake announced. The change was more obvious now. Brain cells that had been silent were starting to show electrical activity. Jake watched carefully, looking for any sign that they were forming new connections with their neighbors. "Neural activity increasing," reported, "still within safe parameters." Jake continued the gradual power increases, his attention fixed on the scanner display. Hours of work had taught him to read biological data, and what he was seeing now filled him with cautious hope. Bright Paw's brain was responding. The medic leaned close to the display, his ears lifted high. "This should not be possible. The damaged neurons are regenerating connections. I can see the quantum entanglement signatures forming. How are you doing this?" "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure," Jake admitted. "But I think the electromagnetic field is creating an environment where the brain naturally wants to form new connections. We're not forcing it. We're just giving it the conditions it needs to heal itself." Another hour passed. Jake's hands shook from fatigue, but he didn't dare stop or hand control to someone else. Every adjustment to the power level had to be precise, responding to subtle changes in Bright Paw's neural activity. Then, without warning, Bright Paw's eyes opened. The cub looked around the medical bay with confusion. His eyes focused on his mother, then his father, then on Jake. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. The mother rushed to his side, tears streaming through her fur. The captain placed both hands on Bright Paw's small shoulders, their whole body shaking with emotion. "Bright Paw," the captain said in their language, "can you hear me?" The cub nodded slowly. His mouth moved, forming words that were weak but clear. "Why sky bright?" The mother laughed and cried at the same time. The captain looked at Jake with an expression of gratitude that needed no translation. Jake checked the neural scans. The damaged areas were still there, but new connections were forming around them. Bright Paw's brain was rewiring itself, finding new pathways to replace the ones destroyed by radiation. It would take time for full recovery, but the process had begun. "Keep the stimulator running at current power for another 6 hours, Jake instructed his team. "Then we'll gradually reduce it as his brain establishes the new connections on its own." He stepped back from the controls, his legs suddenly weak, caught his arm, steadying him. "You need rest," she said firmly. Not yet, not until all three cubs are stable. But as Jake looked at the three medical tables, at Soft Whisper and Swift Runner recovering from their radiation damage, at Bright Paw with his eyes open and his mind returning, he allowed himself a moment of relief. They had done it. Against all odds, against every protocol, against the limits of what was thought possible, they had saved 3 lives. The medical ship arrived exactly 8 hours after the original distress call, docking with the damaged transport in a smooth, practiced maneuver. Jake stood in the medical bay, his exhaustion so complete that he could barely stand, watching the 3 cubs sleep peacefully on their tables. All 3 showed stable vital signs. All 3 were alive. Captain Lisa's voice came through the communication system. "Jake, the specialists are boarding, and there are Galactic Council observers with them. This is about to get official." Jake straightened his uniform, trying to look professional despite having worked for nearly 12 straight hours. And Bate did the same, forming up beside him. The medic who had helped them stood slightly apart, his posture uncertain. The medical bay doors opened, and 6 entered. 5 wore the formal robes of medical specialists, their fur groomed to perfection, their bearing radiating authority. The 6th wore the insignia of a Galactic Council medical oversight officer. Behind them came 2 more council observers, representing species Jake recognized but couldn't name. The lead specialist approached the medical tables, their large eyes scanning the cubs with practiced efficiency. They pulled out a medical scanner more advanced than anything Jake had seen and began examining Soft Whisper. "I am Dr. Still Waters," the specialist said through their translator. "I lead the Medical Institute's emergency response team. I was told human doctors performed unauthorized treatment on these cubs. I am here to assess the damage and provide proper care." The emphasis on proper care was clear. Still Waters expected to find mistakes, harm, evidence that human medicine had no business treating children. Jake said nothing, letting the specialist work. Still Waters moved from Soft Whisper to Swift Runner, then to Bright Paw, running detailed scans on each cub. The other specialists joined in, pulling up data on holographic displays, comparing readings, speaking in rapid that the translators couldn't keep up with. The minutes stretched. Still Waters' ears, which had been flat against their head in what Jake now recognized as disapproval, slowly began to rise. The specialist ran the scans again, as if unable to believe the results. Finally, Still Waters turned to face Jake. "Explain what you did." Jake walked to the central display and pulled up the treatment records. "We identified that the cub's cellular degradation was caused by unstable electromagnetic fields from the damaged medical bay. We used modified human medical equipment to generate stable fields that allowed their cells to begin repair processes. We treated all 3 cubs simultaneously using coordinated electromagnetic stimulation cycles." "That should not work," Still Waters said flatly. "Cellular repair requires precise frequency matching that non-equipment cannot achieve. Human equipment can achieve it because we developed our technology in Earth's complex electromagnetic environment. We're used to generating and controlling precise fields." Still Waters pulled up Bright Paw's neural scans. "And this? You performed experimental neural regeneration on a cub with 35% brain damage. Do you understand how dangerous that was?" "I understand that a child was facing permanent disability, and I had a theoretical approach that might help. So I tried." "You tried," Still Waters repeated. "You experimented on a child's brain with techniques that have never been tested." "And it worked," Jake said quietly. "Bright Paw's brain is forming new neural connections." He woke up. He spoke. He recognized his parents. Without treatment, he would have been in a vegetative state for life. Still Waters stared at him for a long moment, then turned to the council observers. "I need to file a formal report on this situation." Jake's stomach sank. This was it. The moment where all his protocol violations, all his unauthorized actions, All his risky decisions would be officially documented. His medical career was likely over. But still Waters surprised him. I am filing a report that states human medical intervention saved 3 cubs who would have died otherwise. The cellular repair techniques represent a breakthrough in cross-species medicine. The neural regeneration work is unprecedented and should be studied immediately by the Medical Institute. One of the council observers stepped forward. They were a tall, thin being with crystalline skin. Dr. Stillwaters, are you stating that you approve of the humans' unauthorized medical actions? I am stating that these humans saved 3 lives using techniques we should have discovered ourselves. Stillwaters moved to Jake, standing very close. I came here expecting to find dead cubs or permanent damage from human ignorance. Instead, I find medical brilliance that challenges everything we thought we knew about cross-species treatment. The specialist turned to address everyone in the medical bay. For generations, we believed that biology was too unique, too complex for other species to treat safely. We believed this so strongly that we wrote it into Galactic Council medical law. These humans have proven we were wrong, not through recklessness but through careful observation, intelligent adaptation, and most importantly, the refusal to accept that any life was beyond saving. Stillwaters faced Jake again. You violated protocols, you risked your career, you performed experimental treatments that could have failed catastrophically. Why? Jake looked at the 3 sleeping cubs, then at their parents who stood watching from across the room. Because they were children who deserved every chance at life we could give them. The protocols exist to protect patients, not to let them die while we follow rules. I would make the same choice again. The captain stepped forward. Doctor and his team saved my family. They worked for 12 hours without rest, using equipment they had to modify on the spot, treating a species they barely understood. They did this not for reward or recognition, but because it was right. Is this not what the Galactic Council claims to value? Is this not the cooperation between species we all seek? The council observer who had spoken before made a note on their data pad. The human doctor's actions were still outside established protocols. There must be consequences. Then let the consequences be that we change the protocols, Stillwaters said firmly. I am recommending to the Galactic Medical Council that emergency, cross-species pediatric treatment be authorized under crisis conditions. I am further recommending that doctors' techniques be taught at every major medical facility in Council space. The observer's crystalline features revealed no emotion, but they nodded slowly. I will include your recommendations in my report, but Doctor must still face a formal review of his actions. Jake expected that. He was prepared for whatever came next. But then the mother moved to the center of the room, her voice carrying through the translator with unmistakable authority. I am Wind Singer, bonded mate of Captain Sharp Strike, mother of Soft Whisper, Swift Runner, and Bright Paw. In culture, when someone saves the life of our children, they are honored with the title Heart Father or Heart Mother. It is the highest honor we can bestow. Dr. Jake, you are Heart Father to my cubs. You are family. She approached Jake and pressed her forehead to his, a gesture he understood was deeply significant even if he didn't know all its meanings. When she stepped back, she continued speaking. If the Galactic Council punishes the one who saved my children, they punish honor itself. They punish compassion. They punish the very ideals they claim to uphold. I will not allow it. The captain added their voice. Neither will I. The government will formally protest any sanctions against Doctor or his team. We will make it clear that humanity acted with courage and skill where others would have followed rules and watched children die. Stillwaters turned to the council observers. You now have statements from the patient's family, from the lead medical specialist, and from the ranking military officer present. I suggest you take these into consideration when filing your reports. The crystalline observer made more notes, their expression unreadable. The formal review will proceed, but I will note the circumstances and the overwhelming support for the human medical team. Over the next hour, Still Waters and the other specialists performed complete examinations of all three cubs. They ran every test available, looking for any hidden damage or complications from the human treatment. Jake and his team waited, knowing their work was being judged by experts. Finally, Still Waters approached them with the results. All three cubs are stable and recovering well. Soft Whisper and Swift Runner show no complications from the cellular repair treatment. Their prognosis is complete recovery within 2 weeks. And Bright Paw? Jake asked. Bright Paw's neural regeneration is progressing better than I thought possible. The new connections forming in his brain show healthy quantum entanglement signatures. He may experience some temporary coordination issues as his brain adapts, but I expect full cognitive recovery within a month. Still Waters paused. You saved not just his life but his mind. That is something even our best specialists could not have done. Jake felt the exhaustion hit him all at once. His legs wobbled and quickly supported him. He should rest, she told Still Waters. We all should. It's been a very long day. Of course, Still Waters gestured to their team. We will take over the cubs' care now. You have done more than enough. But before Jake could leave, Bright Paw opened his eyes again. The cub looked around until he spotted Jake, then raised one small hand in what might have been a wave. Thank you, Sky Bright Human. Bright Paw's weak voice came through the translator. Jake smiled despite his exhaustion. You're welcome, Bright Paw. Feel better. Captain Lisa met Jake and his team as they returned to the Mercy's Hope. She studied their faces, seeing the exhaustion and strain of the past 12 hours. The Council has sent official notification, Lisa said. There will be a formal review of your actions in 2 weeks, but I've also received unofficial word that the government is pushing hard for commendation instead of sanction. They're calling this a turning point in cross-species medical cooperation. I don't care about commendations, Jake said. I just want to know the cubs will be okay. They will be, thanks to you and your team. Lisa's expression softened. Jake, what you did today, that was what humanity is supposed to be about. Seeing someone in need and helping them regardless of the risks or the rules. I'm proud of you. 2 weeks later, Jake stood before the Galactic Medical Council's review board. The chamber was massive, filled with representatives from dozens of species. He had prepared a defense of his actions, ready to argue that saving lives justified breaking protocols. But the lead council member, a being whose species Jake didn't recognize, began the session with unexpected words. Doctor, we have reviewed your actions aboard the transport vessel. We have examined the medical records, interviewed the specialists, and spoken with the cub's family. We have reached our decision. Jake braced himself. The council finds that your actions, while technically outside established protocols, were justified by the circumstances and ultimately resulted in the best possible outcome for the patients. No sanctions will be filed. Instead, we are issuing a formal commendation for exceptional cross-species medical service. The chamber erupted in a mix of reactions. Some species applauded, others made sounds that might have been approval or disagreement. The council member continued. Furthermore, we are establishing a new emergency medical protocol allowing cross-species pediatric treatment under crisis conditions. This protocol will be known as the Standard, in recognition of your pioneering work. Jake barely heard the rest of the session. His mind was on 3 small cubs recovering on a colony world, on the parents who had trusted him with their children, on the team that had stood with him through impossible odds. 6 months later, Jake received a message on his personal communicator. It was from Wind Singer and Sharp Strike. The message included a holographic recording. The image showed 3 healthy cubs playing in what looked like a garden. Soft Whisper climbed a tall structure with easy grace. Swift Runner chased after something Jake couldn't see, moving with perfect coordination. and Bright Paw stood in the center, looking at the sky, his voice coming through clearly. Why sky bright, why stars shine, why humans far but hearts close? The image shifted to show Wind Singer and Sharp Strike. Through the translator, they spoke together. Because one human refused to let them die, 3 lives shine bright. Because one human believed that protocols matter less than compassion, the galaxy learned what humanity truly offers. Not just technology or strength, but the fierce belief that every single life has value beyond measure. You are Heart Father forever, Jake. You are the example we hope all species will follow. Thank you for our children. Thank you for showing us what it means to refuse defeat when love and courage demand action. The message ended. Jake sat in his quarters on the Mercy's Hope, looking at that frozen image of 3 healthy cubs. He thought about all the reasons he should have refused to treat them, all the ways things could have gone wrong, all the protocols he had broken. And he knew, without any doubt, that he would do it all again. Because in the end, humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy wasn't superior technology or military might. It was the simple, stubborn belief that no life should be abandoned, that every patient deserves a fighter in their corner, and that sometimes the right choice is the one that breaks all the rules. They had learned something important that day, but so had Jake. He had learned that humanity's place in the stars wasn't about being stronger or smarter than other species. It was about being the ones who refused to give up, who saw solutions where others saw impossibility, who measured success not in protocols followed but in lives saved. 3 cubs had been dying, time running out with each passing minute. One human medic and his team had refused to accept that outcome. They had invented new techniques on the spot, pushed equipment beyond safe limits, worked for 12 hours without rest, and changed cross-species medicine forever. And in doing so, they had proven what humanity could be at its best. Not conquerors or warriors, but healers. Not rule followers, but compassionate fighters willing to take risks when lives hung in the balance. Jake looked out the window at the stars, at the vast galaxy filled with species learning to work together. Somewhere out there, 3 cubs were growing up healthy because humans had been there when it mattered most. That, he thought, was worth breaking every protocol ever written.